The emergency lights flashed red across the Galactic Council chamber. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, watching the holographic display with growing fear. The image showed a planet being consumed, not destroyed by weapons, but eaten alive by millions of writhing creatures that moved as one massive organism. Commander Taiyang stood at the center podium, scaled hands gripping the edges as he spoke. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. The Zarn swarm has taken 17 of our colony worlds in 3 months. 3 billion Valkyrie are dead. Our fleets cannot stop them. They reproduce faster than we can kill them. They adapt to our weapons within hours. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They only consume. The council members shifted nervously in their seats. Everyone knew about the Zarn swarm from ancient records, but no living civilization had faced them in thousands of years. They were supposed to be extinct, a nightmare from the past that would never return. We have one option remaining, Taiyang continued. His next words made the entire chamber fall silent. We must activate Protocol Epsilon. We must call the humans. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species shouted their approval, while others roared their objections. The humans had not been seen in galactic affairs for nearly 50 years. Not since the brief but terrifying First Contact War. Back then, humanity had been new to faster-than-light travel, stumbling into a border conflict with the Krell Empire. The war lasted only 6 months before the Krell surrendered. But those 6 months had changed how the galaxy viewed Earth forever. Humans fought differently than other species. They did not follow the traditional rules of engagement. They used tactics that other civilizations considered too brutal, too underhanded, too efficient. They won battles they should have lost through sheer determination and creativity. After the war ended, humanity had retreated to their home systems, politely declining membership in the Galactic Council. They maintained diplomatic relations. They kept their military forces hidden away. The galaxy had been relieved when humans chose isolation. Now, facing extinction, the Council had nowhere else to turn. Ambassador Hannah sat in the human observation booth, watching the debate unfold below. She was a tall woman with short black hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. She had served as Earth's representative to the Council for 10 years, mostly handling trade agreements and cultural exchanges. She knew this moment would eventually come. The Council speaker, an elderly Torvin with silver fur, raised his staff for silence. The vote is called. All in favor of activating Protocol Epsilon and requesting military aid from Earth. 43 species voted yes. For abstained, none voted no. The speaker turned to look at Hannah's booth. Ambassador, will Earth answer our call? Hannah stood and activated her communication panel. Her voice was steady and clear. I will transmit your request immediately. However, I must warn this council that summoning Earth's military is not a simple decision. Once called, they will come with full force. They will fight by their own rules and their own methods. If you ask for their help, you must accept how they choose to give it. We understand, Taiyang said, though his voice suggested he did not truly comprehend what was coming. We have no other choice. Hannah nodded slowly. Then I will make the call. She returned to her quarters and sat at her desk, staring at the blank transmission screen for several minutes. She thought about Earth, about the planet she had left behind decades ago. She thought about the massive shipyards hidden in the outer solar system, the weapons research facilities on Mars, the tactical academies training officers for wars that might never come. Earth had not been idle during its isolation. If anything, humanity had been preparing. She typed the encryption codes and opened a secure. Channeled directly to Pacific Fleet Command on Earth. The face that appeared on her screen was weathered and serious. Admiral Minho commanded Earth's largest military fleet, and his reputation was legendary among the few aliens who knew about him. Ambassador Hannah, he said, I've been expecting this call. The Galactic Council has activated Protocol Epsilon. They're requesting immediate military assistance against a threat called the Zarn Swarm. The situation is critical. Minho's expression did not change. Send me all available intelligence on the enemy and the current military situation. I'll convene the Defense Council within the hour. 3 hours later, Hannah received a response. It was not from Minho, but from the Unified Earth Defense Council itself, the highest military authority on the planet. General Guan, a stern woman with silver streaks in her black hair, delivered the message. Earth accepts the Council's request for aid. Admiral Minho will command the expeditionary force. We will deploy Battle Group Omega, consisting of 32 capital ships, 64 destroyers, 18 carriers, and support vessels. Estimated arrival at Valkyrie space in 47 days. Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. Battle Group Omega was not Earth's largest fleet, but it represented enormous military power. And 47 days was impossible. Even with the best faster-than-light drives in the galaxy, the journey from Earth to Valkyrie space should take at least 3 months. She transmitted the response to the Galactic Council. When the other species saw the timeline, they assumed it was a human error. No one could cross that much space so quickly. Commander Taiyang contacted her directly. Ambassador, there must be a mistake in the transmission. Your timeline shows arrival in 47 days. That's not possible with known technology. Hannah smiled slightly. Commander, Earth has not shared all of its technological developments with the galaxy. Our drives are considerably faster than yours. If Admiral Minho says 47 days, you can expect him in 47 days. Possibly sooner. On Earth. Massive shipyards orbiting Saturn came to life. Ships that had been dormant for decades powered up their reactors. Crews that had trained for years in simulations finally boarded their vessels for real deployments. Weapons were loaded, supplies were stocked, and families said goodbye to their loved ones. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, the flagship of Battle Group Omega. The ship was 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could shatter moons. He looked at the tactical display showing the route to Valkyrie space and the estimated enemy positions. All ships report ready for departure, his communications officer reported. Minho nodded. Signal the fleet. We jump in 5 minutes. Set course for Valkyrie space. Maximum speed. It's time to remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us. The Indomitable's engines built to full power, creating a distortion in space itself. Around it, 114 other human warships did the same. The darkness of space lit up as the entire fleet vanished in flashes of blue-white light, jumping toward a war that would change the galaxy forever in the Galactic Council chamber. Species from across known space waited nervously for the humans to arrive. They did not know if they had just saved themselves or unleashed something far more dangerous than the swarm. Commander Taiyang stood at his command post on his homeworld, watching the casualty reports come in from the front lines. More colonies lost. More billions dead. The swarm was unstoppable. He looked up at the stars and hoped the humans would hurry. And he hoped they were as dangerous as the legends claimed. 20-6 days after departing Earth, Battle Group Omega emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Valkyrie space. The sudden appearance of 114 warships sent every sensor in the system screaming alerts. The Valkyrie defense fleet, exhausted from months of constant battle, initially thought they were facing another swarm attack. Commander Taiyang rushed to his command center when the alarm sounded. He stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The ships were human. They had crossed the galaxy in less than half the estimated time. How is this possible? His second officer asked, echoing everyone's thoughts. Taiyang shook his head slowly. I don't know. But I'm grateful they're here. The UES Indomitable moved to the front of the formation, its massive bulk dwarfing most of the Valkyrie ships. A communication request came through on all frequencies. Taiyang accepted it immediately. Admiral Minho's face appeared on the screen. He looked exactly as his file photos suggested. A man in his 50s with hard eyes and a calm demeanor that suggested nothing could surprise him. Commander Taiyang, I am Admiral Minho of the United Earth Space Forces. We received your distress call. Where do you need us? Taiyang felt relief wash over him for the first time in months. Admiral, welcome to Valkyrie space. I'm transmitting current tactical data now. The swarm has taken 17 colony worlds and is advancing on 3 more. Our fleet is scattered across defensive positions trying to slow their advance. We estimate enemy forces at approximately 50 million individual organisms operating in coordinated swarms. Minho studied the data silently for several moments. When he spoke again, his voice was matter-of-fact. Your defensive strategy is failing because you're fighting the war the swarm wants you to fight. They overwhelm defensive positions through numbers and attrition. You cannot win by defending. Admiral, we don't have enough ships to launch offensive operations, Taiyang protested. Even with your fleet, we're still outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. We're going to change the nature of this war, Minho gestured to someone off-screen. I'm sending Captain Daeho and a reconnaissance group to scout enemy positions. We need better intelligence on their command structure and supply chains. Captain Daeho commanded the destroyer Sol's Fury, a fast attack ship built for deep space operations. Within 2 hours, his strike group of 4 destroyers jumped into swarm-controlled territory. The Valkyrie observers thought this was suicide. The swarm destroyed everything that entered their space, but the human ships were different. They did not follow predictable patrol routes or use standard sensor sweeps. They moved like ghosts, using the gravity wells of dead planets and the radiation of nearby stars to mask their presence. They observed enemy movements without being detected, cataloging everything they saw. 3 days later, Daeho's group returned with complete data on swarm operations in 7 systems. More importantly, they had discovered something the Valkyrie had missed during months of fighting. The swarm was not a mindless horde. It had a central coordination hub, a massive biological ship that directed all the smaller organisms. Daeho stood in the Indomitable's briefing room, presenting his findings to Admiral Minho and the senior officers. Commander Taiyang attended via holographic link, along with representatives from other Valkyrie military divisions. The coordination hub is here. Daeho pointed to a location deep in swarm territory. It's 10 times larger than any other organism we've observed. All communications between swarm groups route through it. If we destroy this hub, we disrupt their entire operational network. One of the Valkyrie generals objected immediately. That's 3 systems away from our lines. Getting a strike force there would require fighting through millions of swarm organisms. It's impossible. Lieutenant Yuna, the Indomitable's tactical officer, spoke up. She was young but brilliant, having graduated top of her class from the Naval War College. It's not impossible if we don't fight our way there. We strike fast and hard using multiple vectors simultaneously. The swarm assumes we'll use conventional assault tactics. We won't. She activated a tactical display showing the proposed battle plan. We divide the fleet into 3 groups. Group Alpha attacks the swarm's main staging area here, drawing their forces. Group Beta simultaneously hits their supply bases here and here. While they're responding to those threats, Group Omega, our fastest ships, jumps directly to the coordination hub and destroys it before they can react. The room fell silent as everyone studied the plan. It was aggressive, risky, and completely contrary to standard military doctrine. It also might actually work. Taiyang finally spoke, his voice uncertain. Admiral Minho, this plan risks significant casualties. If any of the 3 groups gets overwhelmed before completing their objectives, they'll be destroyed. Minho nodded. Yes, war has costs, Commander. But this plan ends the swarm's advantage quickly. The longer we wait, the more colonies they take, and the more civilians die. I'd rather risk my ships and my people in a decisive strike than watch billions more get consumed while we play it safe. The Admiral stood and addressed the entire room. This is the difference between human military doctrine and yours. You've been taught to minimize casualties and fight honorably. We've been taught to win. Sometimes winning requires sacrifice. Sometimes it requires brutality. But it always requires the will to do what must be done. He turned to Taiyang. Commander, I'm not asking your permission. I'm informing you of our battle plan. Your fleet can join the assault or maintain defensive positions. Either way, in 72 hours, we're going on the offensive. Taiyang looked at the tactical display, at the red indicators showing swarm positions, at the blue icons representing human ships preparing to strike deep into enemy territory. He thought about his people, about the colonies already lost, about the billions who would die if this continued. "My fleet will join your attack," he said quietly. "We'll follow your lead, Admiral." Minho smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. "Good, then. Let's begin preparations." Over the next 3 days, the combined human and Valkyrie forces organized for the assault. Human ships moved with a precision and speed that amazed the Valkyrie observers. Supply transfers happened in hours instead of days. Weapons calibrations were completed with practiced efficiency. The humans had clearly done this many times before. Despite claiming they had not fought a real war in 50 years, Captain Bowman, commanding the carrier Relentless, drilled his fighter squadrons constantly. Battleship Commander Haijin ran her crew through firing exercises until they could hit targets, while making evasive maneuvers. Every human ship prepared with the understanding that mistakes would cost lives, Commander. Taiyang watched all this from his command ship. He began to understand what Ambassador Hannah had meant when she warned the Council. The humans were not here to defend. They were here to destroy. They moved like predators preparing for a hunt, calm and focused, and absolutely certain of their purpose. On the final night before the assault, Taiyang couldn't sleep. He went to the observation deck of his ship and stared out at the stars. The human fleet floated nearby, their running lights creating a constellation of blue and white dots against the darkness. A communication request came through his personal channel. It was Admiral Minho. "Commander, you should rest before tomorrow," the Admiral said. "I can't stop thinking about what we're about to do," Taiyang admitted. "About how many of us won't come back." Minho was silent for a moment. "I think about that too. Every officer who sends people into battle thinks about it. But the swarm doesn't think about mercy or casualties or fair fights. They think about consuming everything in their path. So we think about stopping them, whatever it takes." "Is that what makes humans so effective?" Taiyang asked. "The willingness to pay any price?" "No," Minho said quietly. "What makes us effective is that we remember what we're paying the price for. We're not fighting for territory or resources or glory. We're fighting so that billions of people we'll never meet can live their lives without fear. That's worth any sacrifice." The communication ended, leaving Taiyang alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the human fleet one more time, and for the first time since the swarm arrived, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The attack began precisely at 0600 hours. The combined human and Valkyrie fleet split into 3 groups, each jumping to their assigned targets simultaneously. The swarm, which had grown comfortable with predictable defensive battles, suddenly faced coordinated assaults across 7 star systems. Group Alpha, led by Admiral Minho aboard the Indomitable, materialized near the swarm's largest staging area. Millions of organic ships swarmed toward them immediately, but the human formation was ready. The battleships opened fire with weapons that burned through biological armor like paper. Carrier groups launched wave after wave of fighters, each equipped with specialized missiles designed to exploit weaknesses in swarm. Biology Commander Taiyang watched from his position in the formation, commanding a squadron of Valkyrie cruisers. He had never seen ships fight like this. The humans moved with perfect coordination, each vessel supporting the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could survive. When swarm organisms tried to overwhelm individual ships through numbers, the formation adapted instantly, closing gaps and redistributing firepower. "This is incredible," his tactical officer whispered. "They're treating the entire fleet like a single weapon." Taiyang could only nod. Years of training and shared doctrine allowed the human ships to operate as one massive organism themselves, moving and striking with purpose while the swarm, for all its numbers, attacked in disorganized waves. 3 systems away, Group Beta began their assault on the swarm's supply chains. Captain Bowman's carrier group struck the breeding centers where new organisms spawned. Battleship Commander Haijin's heavy cruisers bombarded resource collection sites. The attacks were brutal and efficient, destroying infrastructure that the swarm needed to sustain its invasion. The Valkyrie officers assigned to Group Beta were shocked by human tactics. When they discovered a colony world that had been partially consumed by the swarm, with some indigenous population possibly still alive, they expected the humans to attempt a rescue operation. Instead, Captain Haijin ordered immediate orbital bombardment, sterilizing the entire planet. There could be survivors down there. A Valkyrie commander protested over the communication channel. Haijin's response was cold and factual. The swarm doesn't leave survivors. It converts them into more organisms. Every hour we delay, they create more enemies. I'm sorry, but this is necessary. The bombardment continued. Haijin stood on her bridge watching the planet burn, her expression showing the weight of what she had ordered. This was the price of fighting the swarm. She would carry that burden so others wouldn't have to. Back at the main battle, the swarm was adapting. New organisms appeared, ones with thicker armor and different attack patterns. They were learning from the engagement, evolving their tactics in real time. This was what made the swarm so dangerous. They improved with every battle. "Admiral, we're seeing adaptation in enemy forces," Lieutenant Yuna reported from her tactical station. "They're developing resistance to our plasma weapons." Minho nodded calmly. "Expected. Switch to kinetic batteries and inform all ships to rotate weapon types every 5 minutes. Don't give them time to adapt." The fleet adjusted immediately. The swarm's new adaptations became worthless as the humans simply changed their attack methods. This kind of tactical flexibility was impossible for most species, who built their entire military doctrines around specific weapon systems. Humans, it seemed, had prepared for every possibility, while Groups Alpha and Beta kept the swarm occupied. Group Omega moved into position for the critical strike. Captain Jinseo commanded this force, the fastest and most heavily armed ships in the human fleet. His flagship, the assault carrier Horizon's End, was built specifically for deep penetration attacks. The coordination hub was defended by thousands of swarm organisms. But Jinseo's approach was unexpected. Instead of fighting through the defenders, his ships jumped in at maximum velocity, already firing as they exited faster than light travel. The shock and speed of the assault created a corridor through the defenses before the swarm could react. "All ships concentrate fire on the hub," Jinseo ordered. "We only get one pass at this." The Horizon's End led the charge, its weapons blazing. Behind it, 9 other capital ships poured fire into the massive biological vessel that coordinated the entire swarm invasion. The hub tried to defend itself, spawning smaller organisms to block the attack. But the human ships used something the Valkyrie had never seen: warp-capable munitions. The weapons jumped in tiny, faster-than-light bursts, bypassing the defenders entirely and striking the hub directly. The battle lasted 8 minutes. In that time, Jinseo lost 2 destroyers and the cruiser Defiant, but the hub was destroyed. The massive organism exploded in silence, its biological components scattering across space. Across 17 star systems, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The swarm organisms, which had moved with perfect coordination moments before, suddenly became confused and disorganized. Their attacks lost cohesion. They began fighting as individuals instead of a unified force. "Target destroyed," Jinseo reported to Admiral Minho. "Is eliminated. We're taking heavy fire from remaining defenders, but we're pulling back now." "Acknowledged, Captain." "Well done. All groups. The primary objective is complete. Begin cleanup operations." The next 6 hours were brutal. The swarm organisms, even without coordination, were still deadly and numerous. But without the hub directing them, they made mistakes. They left gaps in their formations. They attacked targets that didn't matter while ignoring critical threats. The human and Valkyrie forces methodically destroyed them, system by system. By the time the battle ended, the swarm had lost 40% of its invasion force. More importantly, it had lost the ability to coordinate large-scale operations. The unstoppable tide had been broken. Admiral Minho stood on the Indomitable's bridge reading casualty reports. The humans had lost 7 ships and nearly 3,000 crew members. The Valkyrie casualties were higher, but far less than they would have been in months of defensive warfare. "Commander?" Tai Yang contacted him as the last swarm organisms in his sector were being destroyed. Admiral, I don't know how to thank you. You've given us hope again. Minho's expression was tired. Thank me when the war is over, Commander. We've hurt them badly, but the swarm isn't defeated yet. This was just the first strike. What do you mean? We destroyed their coordination hub. They're scattered and confused. For now, Minho agreed. But the swarm adapts, remember? They'll learn from this defeat. They'll evolve new command structures. And somewhere out there is the source, the place where they originally came from. Until we find that and destroy it, this threat isn't over. Taiyang felt his relief fade, replaced by grim determination. Then we keep fighting, as Minho said. We keep fighting, and next time, we hit them even harder. The human fleet regrouped, treating their wounded and repairing damaged ships. The Valkyrie watched them work with a mixture of gratitude and unease. The humans had saved them, but in doing so, had demonstrated a capacity for violence that was both inspiring and frightening. On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Yuna was already analyzing battle data, looking for patterns in how the swarm adapted. Engineer Sujin worked on new weapons specifically designed to counter biological organisms. Captain Deho planned reconnaissance, missions to track the swarm's retreat and find their next target. The humans were not celebrating their victory. They were already preparing for the next battle. This was what they did, what they had trained for during 50 years of isolation. They were not warriors who fought when necessary. They were a civilization that had made warfare into a science. Commander. Taiyang understood now what Ambassador Hannah had tried to warn the Council about. They had not summoned allies. They had summoned something far more dangerous. Humans who had decided to go to war. The weeks following the destruction of the coordination hub brought mixed news. The swarm's advance had stopped, but the disorganized organisms were actually harder to predict. They attacked randomly, sometimes with terrifying ferocity, other times retreating without reason. The Valkyrie fleet, working alongside human forces, fought dozens of small battles instead of one large front. Admiral Minho used this time to gather intelligence. He knew the swarm had not been defeated, merely disrupted. Somewhere out there was a source, an origin point that could create new coordination hubs, until they found and destroyed it. The threat would never truly end. He assigned Intelligence Officer Hyunwoo to lead the search. Hyunwoo was a quiet man who preferred data analysis to combat, but his work was crucial to the war effort. He studied patterns in swarm movements, analyzed the genetic structure of captured organisms, and tracked communication signals that might lead back to their homeworld. It was tedious, careful work that took weeks of constant effort. While the fleets fought scattered battles across Valkyrie space, Hyunwoo sat in the Indomitable's intelligence center, surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts, genetic sequences, and probability models. There has to be a pattern, he muttered to himself for the 100th time. They didn't just appear randomly. They came from somewhere. His assistant, a young analyst named Min-jae, brought him another dataset. Sir, we've been tracking the retreat patterns of swarm organisms after battles. Most flee toward the galactic rim, but there's a cluster that consistently moves toward this nebula. He highlighted a dark region of space on the star chart. Hyunwoo studied the nebula carefully. It was massive, filled with dense dust clouds that would block most sensors. No one's ever explored that region. The Valkyrie charts list it as a navigation hazard. Perfect place to hide a homeworld, Min-jae suggested. Hyunwoo immediately contacted Admiral Minho. Sir, I think we found it. Requesting permission to take a reconnaissance team into the Vercanos Nebula. Minho appeared on the communication screen, his expression thoughtful. That's Deep Space Officer Hyunwoo. If you get in trouble out there, we can't reach you quickly. Are you sure? As sure as I can be without confirmation, sir. The patterns all point there, and go. But take a full escort and stay in constant communication. If you find the homeworld, do not engage. Report back immediately. Hyunwoo assembled a team of 4 science vessels and 8 destroyer escorts. They jumped to the nebula's edge 3 days later. The dense dust clouds made navigation difficult, and sensors were almost useless beyond a few thousand kilometers. They moved slowly, carefully, mapping as they went. It took 2 weeks to reach the nebula's center. What they found there made Hyenwoo's blood run cold. "Admiral," he transmitted back to the fleet, "you need to see this." The data stream showed a planet, but not like any world Hyenwoo had seen before. It was organic, a massive living thing that pulsed with biological energy. Surrounding it were thousands of bioships under construction, growing from the planet's surface like fruit from a tree. "It's a factory," Hyenwoo reported. "They're not just hiding here. They're building new invasion fleets. And sir, the scale of this operation, this isn't just about conquering Valkyrie space. This is a staging ground for consuming the entire galaxy." Minho studied the data silently, then called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. The briefing room was packed with captains, commanders, and Valkyrie military leaders. Hyenwoo's findings were displayed for everyone to see. "This is what we're really facing," Minho said. "The invasion of Valkyrie space was just the beginning. If we don't stop them at their source, they'll spread across every system in the galaxy." Colonel Yunji, head of special operations, spoke up. "Then we destroy it. We take the fleet into the nebula and eliminate this homeworld." "It's not that simple," Commander Taiyang objected. "That nebula will hide the swarm's forces as effectively as it hides the planet. We could jump into the middle of millions of organisms without knowing they're there until it's too late." "And we don't jump," Lieutenant Yuna said. All eyes turned to her. "We go in slowly like Officer Hyenwoo did, clearing the approach. It will take time, but it's safer." General Juwan, attending the meeting via communication link from Earth, shook her head. "We don't have time. While we carefully approach, that planet is building more swarm forces. Every day we delay, they get stronger." The debate continued for hours. Some advocated for immediate attack despite the risks. Others wanted to develop new weapons specifically designed to work in the nebula's conditions. A few suggested blockading the nebula and containing the swarm rather than confronting them directly. During a brief recess, Minho stood alone on an observation deck, staring at the distant nebula. Captain Jinseo found him there. "You've already made your decision, haven't you?" Jinseo asked. Minho nodded slowly. "We're going to attack directly. Full force, maximum aggression. We'll jump the entire fleet into the nebula and fight our way to that planet." "It's going to be costly," Jinseo said quietly. "Maybe half the fleet won't make it back." "I know." Minho's voice was heavy. "But if we fail, if we let the swarm continue building its forces, the cost will be measured in trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. I'll accept losing half my fleet to prevent that." The meeting reconvened and Minho presented his decision. The fleet would prepare for 3 days, then launch a direct assault on the swarm homeworld. Every available ship would participate. There would be no reserves, no backup plan. They would commit everything to this one attack. Commander Taiyang objected immediately. "Admiral, this is suicide. You're talking about taking a fleet into enemy territory with no visibility, no backup, and no way to retreat if things go wrong." "Yes," Minho agreed simply. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not ordering you or any Valkyrie forces to join us. This is a human operation. You've suffered enough already. Can't do this alone," Taiyang protested. "We can, and we will. This is what we came here to do, Commander. The Council called for backup, and we answered. Now we're going to finish the job." During the preparation period, the reality of what was coming affected everyone differently. Medic June worked overtime preparing the medical bays, knowing they would be overwhelmed with casualties. Young pilot Minsu wrote letters to his family, carefully avoiding mentioning how dangerous the coming battle would be. Engineer Hound checked and rechecked every system on her ship, determined that no mechanical failure would cost lives if she could prevent it. Commander Junho, a veteran of the First Contact War, gathered his officers for a final briefing. "Some of us won't come back from this," he told them honestly. "But we're doing this so that billions of people who don't even know we exist can sleep safely. That's what service means. That's what sacrifice means. And I'm honored to face this with all of you." On the Indomitable, Admiral Minho sat alone in his quarters, writing his own letters. One to his wife, one to his children, one to the next admiral, who would take command if he didn't return. He wrote about duty, about making hard choices, about the burden of command. He did not apologize for his decisions. He simply explained them. The day before the assault, something unexpected happened. Commander Tai Yang contacted Admiral Min Ho with news. The Valkyrie High Command has made a decision. We're joining the assault. All available ships will accompany your fleet into the nebula. Commander, I told you this wasn't necessary, Min Ho said. I'm telling you it is, Tai Yang replied firmly. You came across the galaxy to help us when we had nowhere else to turn. You've lost thousands of your people fighting our war. We will not let you face this final battle alone. Where you go, we go. Minho felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine emotion. Thank you, Commander. Your people have more courage than you give them credit for. We learned it from you, Tai Yang said simply. The combined fleet began final preparations. Every ship checked its weapons one last time. Every crew member said their quiet goodbyes. Every commander made peace with what might come. In the darkness of space, the nebula waited, hiding the swarm homeworld and the final confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The entire fleet materialized inside the Varkanos Nebula simultaneously. Immediately, visibility dropped to almost nothing. The dense dust clouds made sensors nearly useless, and visual confirmation was limited to a few kilometers. It was like fighting while blind. They didn't have to wait long for the swarm to find them. Millions of organic ships emerged from the clouds, attacking from all directions at once. The battle began with terrifying intensity. Captain Bowman's carrier groups launched their fighters immediately. The small craft darted through the nebula, their pilots relying more on instinct than instruments. Pilot Sora led her squadron in a desperate dance through the clouds, buying time for the capital ships to form defensive positions. Contacts everywhere. Her wingman shouted over the communication channel, "I can't get a clear count." "Don't count. Just shoot," Sora replied, sending a burst of missiles into a cluster of swarm organisms. The explosions lit up the nebula briefly, revealing even more enemies waiting in the darkness. The capital ships formed a sphere formation, each vessel covering the other's blind spots. It was a defensive position, but Admiral Minho had no intention of staying defensive. All ships advanced toward the planet's coordinates. Maximum speed. We're going straight through them. The fleet began to move, fighting every meter of the way. The swarm threw everything at them, wave after wave of organisms trying to overwhelm the formation through sheer numbers. Ships took damage. Shields failed. Crews died. But the advance continued. Commander Junho's heavy cruisers Steadfast held the forward position, taking the worst of the enemy fire to protect the ships behind it. His shields were failing, his hull breached in multiple locations. But he kept his ship between the swarm and the Indomitable. "Sir, we need to fall back," his tactical officer urged. "We can't take much more of this." "Then we better hold what we've got," Junho replied calmly. He targeted another cluster of organisms, firing his weapons until the barrels glowed red from overheating. A massive swarm bioship, larger than anything they had seen before, emerged from the clouds ahead. It blocked the fleet's path, and thousands of smaller organisms swarmed around it. "That's protecting the planet," Lieutenant Yuna identified immediately. "It's their last line of defense." Admiral Minho made his decision instantly. "Captain Jinseo, this is your mission. The Horizon's End is loaded with the stellar converter. You know what to do." Captain Jinseo had been preparing for this moment since they left Earth. His ship carried humanity's most devastating weapon, a device that could ignite a planet's core and turn it into a temporary star. It required manual delivery and detonation. There was no remote option, no safe distance. His crew had volunteered knowing they would not survive. "Understood, Admiral." Horizon's End, beginning attack run. The assault carrier broke formation, accelerating toward the planet. Around it, the swarm concentrated all their forces, trying to stop this one ship. They seemed to understand somehow that this was the critical threat. Commander Junho saw what was happening and made his own decision. All power to engines. Get us between Horizon's End and those organisms. "Sir, if we do that, we'll be completely exposed," his tactical officer warned. I know. Do it anyway. The Steadfast surged forward, placing itself directly in the path of thousands of swarm ships. Junho's weapons fired continuously, creating a corridor through the enemy forces. His ship was being torn apart, but every second he held gave Jinseo more time. Admiral Junho transmitted, his voice calm, despite alarms screaming in the background. The path is clear. Make it count. The Steadfast exploded seconds later, its reactor detonating in a blast that destroyed hundreds of swarm organisms and temporarily blinded sensors across the entire battlefield. Commander Junho and his crew of 300 were gone. They had bought the time needed. The Horizon's End dove through the gap, the massive bioship and its defenders scrambling to intercept. But Jinseo's ship was fast, and his crew was determined. They punched through the last line of defense and entered the planet's atmosphere. The organic world tried to defend itself, spawning organisms to attack the incoming ship. The Horizon's End's hull began to burn from atmospheric friction and enemy weapons. But the ship kept going, driving deeper toward the planet's core. On the bridge, Captain Jinseo stood calmly as his ship shook apart around him. His crew remained at their stations, maintaining course and speed even as sections of the ship were destroyed.
Sir.
We're at the optimal detonation depth, his navigator reported. Jinseo nodded and activated the stellar converter. The device began its sequence, and there was no stopping it now. He opened a final communication channel to Admiral Minho. Admiral, device is armed. It's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Captain. Your sacrifice will be remembered. Jinseo smiled slightly, then addressed his crew. All hands, you've done your duty perfectly. What we do here today saves billions of lives. Be proud. He opened a general broadcast, one that would reach not just the human fleet, but the swarm itself. You taught the galaxy fear. We are teaching you death. Then he activated the detonator. The planet's core ignited with the force of a newborn star. The reaction spread rapidly through the organic matter, turning the entire world into a massive bomb. The explosion was visible even through the nebula's dense clouds. A flash of light that briefly illuminated everything. The swarm's collective consciousness. The ancient queen organism that had directed invasions across multiple galaxies died instantly. Without it, every swarm organism everywhere experienced the same death. Across 17 star systems, in the nebula, on conquered worlds, every single member of the swarm collapsed simultaneously, their bodies going still as the hive mind that connected them ceased to exist. On the Indomitable, sensors showed the sudden absence of enemy contacts. The battle simply ended. One moment they were fighting for their lives, the next they were alone in the nebula, with only debris and silence. Swarm life signs negative across all sectors, Lieutenant Yuna reported, her voice filled with disbelief. Sir, they're all dead. Every single one. Admiral Minho stood silently for a long moment, staring at the tactical display that now showed only friendly contacts. They had one, but the cost had been terrible. The Horizon's End was gone. The Steadfast was gone. 17 other ships had been destroyed in the final assault. 20,000 human crew members would not be returning home. Signal all ships, he said quietly. Begin search and rescue operations for survivors. Recover what we can, and send a message to Earth and the Galactic Council. The swarm is extinct. The next days were somber. The fleet limped out of the nebula, damaged ships assisted by those still functional. Medical bays overflowed with wounded. Memorial services were held for the fallen. Commander Tai Yang came aboard the Indomitable to meet Admiral Minho in person. The two men stood in the observation deck, looking at the stars. My people want to know how we can possibly thank you, Tai Yang said. You've lost so much helping us. Minho shook his head. We didn't do this for thanks. We did it because it needed to be done, and we had the capability to do it. Still, Earth deserves recognition. The galaxy owes you everything. The galaxy owes us nothing, Minho said firmly. We came, we fought, and now we're going home. That's all. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council prepared elaborate ceremonies, drafted treaties of eternal alliance, and composed speeches of gratitude. Ambassador Hannah politely declined most of it. Earth appreciates the sentiment, she told the council, but we prefer to return to our own space. We'll maintain diplomatic relations, but we're not interested in medals or parades. The human fleet departed Velkari space 2 weeks after the final battle. They left behind a galaxy that was safe but fundamentally changed. The species that had watched humans fight now understood something that would shape galactic politics for generations to come. Somewhere in the darkness, humanity existed. They did not seek conquest or glory. They preferred isolation and peace. But if you called them, if you truly needed them, they would come in full force. They would do whatever was necessary, pay any price, and bear any burden to protect life itself. They were not heroes. They were not saviors. They were simply humans, and that was enough. On the Indomitable. Sailing back toward Earth, Admiral Minho sat in his quarters and finally allowed himself to feel the weight of what they had done. He thought about Commander Junho, about Captain Jinseo, about every person who had not come home. A message notification appeared on his screen. It was from Earth, from the families of the fallen. They were not asking questions or placing blame. They were simply saying thank you. Thank you for bringing purpose to their loved one's sacrifice. Thank you for making sure it mattered. Min. All 20,000 of them. It took him 3 days. He owed them that much. When the fleet finally reached Earth orbit, there were no celebrations. Just quiet reunions, people returning to the lives they had left behind. The ships were taken back to the orbital yards for repairs. The weapons were powered down. The crews dispersed to their homes. The galaxy remembered what happened in the Varkanos Nebula. Monuments were built on 100 worlds. Children learned about the humans who came when called and ended an ancient evil. Historians debated tactics and strategies for decades. But on Earth, life simply continued. Because that's what humans did. They answered the call when needed, then returned home to their ordinary lives, carrying the memory of what they had done in silence, and in the darkness between stars, the galaxy was a little bit safer, protected by the knowledge that somewhere, watching quietly, humanity stood ready to answer the call again, if it ever came.